Hi, I'm Heather. And for this video, I'm looking at Priceline's terms of use, basically their terms and conditions. And I focused on part one, sections A through F. So the main goal here is to figure out whether this is actually a valid contract, whether users are really bound by it, and what happens if there is a dispute, and what I think Priceline could do better. First question, is this even a valid contract? On paper, yes. Priceline offers a service. Users get something in return, so there is consideration there. Legally, online contracts can absolutely be enforceable. That part isn't controversial. Where things get a little messy is how users are supposed to agree to it. Priceline uses what's called a browse wrap agreement, which basically means the terms are linked at the bottom of the page, and they assume that if you use the site, you agree. According to legal experts who study online contracts, including firms like Crowell and Mooring, courts have been getting more skeptical of this approach, especially when users aren't clearly told that just using the site equals acceptance. Which brings me to the next question. Are users really bound to this? Technically, Priceline says yes, but realistically, it's debatable. Groups like the Digital Media Law Project point out that click wrap agreements, where you actually have to click I agree, are way more enforceable. In my opinion, Priceline should absolutely require users to actively agree, at least when they make an account or book trip. Without that, it's easy for users to say they never knowingly agreed to the fine print. Now let's talk about disputes. According to Priceline's own terms and conditions, if you have a problem with them, you generally can't sue them in court. You're required to go through arbitration, and you also give up your right to be part of a class action lawsuit. This is pretty common, but it's also controversial. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, which tracks terms of service across the internet, has raised concerns about arbitration clauses like this because they limit consumer rights, especially when people don't realize they've agreed to them in the first place. And again, this all circles back to notice and consent. Courts are much more likely to enforce arbitration if they use clearly defined and presented agreements and the user clearly agrees to it, which is another reason browse wrap is risky. Another thing that stood out to me was Priceline's ability to change the terms. They reserve the right to modify the agreement pretty much whenever they want, often without directly notifying users. According to digital rights organizations like the EFF, courts have questioned whether that's fair because it undermines mutual agreement. You can't really agree to future terms you haven't seen. So, what would I change? First, I'd switch to a click wrap agreement. No question about that. Second, if Priceline changes anything major, especially around arbitration or liability, users should be notified and asked to agree again. And third, I'd simplify the language. A lot of this is written in dense legal language that most people won't read, which kind of defeats the purpose of informed consent. So overall, Priceline's terms of use look like a contract, but how enforceable they are really depends on whether users actually understand and agree to them. A few changes could make the agreement both stronger legally and fairer to users. Thanks for watching.